Okay, I think we're going to get underway. Welcome to the Florida Civic Advance webinar series. Today's program is going to focus and feature TableTalk, Central Florida Foundation's Civic Conversations and Action Strategy. And I think you're going to find the program compelling and interesting. And we will, at the conclusion, we'll have Q&A, but I'll go ahead and give you a quick set of housekeeping guidelines. Place your device on mute until we get to the Q&A, and you will open it up then. Please use the chat for sharing questions and comments and links to resources as you are thinking about them through the course of the presentations. Show respect for the speakers and each other, and we will try to have the speakers answer your questions as you note them on chat through the presentations, but we'll also have an open Q&A at the conclusion. So the Florida Civic Advance is dedicated to advancing civic health in Florida communities. And civic health is really about the opportunities that people have for participating and improving the life in their communities. Civic health is measured, and the measurements suggest with communities with strong indicators of civic health have a lot of very positive outcomes: higher unemployment rates, stronger schools, more responsive local governments, accessible civic gathering in places and libraries and public parks, as well as at the individual level, better physical health. And research has suggested that their residents in civically healthy communities live longer and healthier lives. The challenge for Florida is, as the third largest state, we're among the lowest states in terms of the measured civic health in statewide. We want to change that. The Florida Civic Advance wants to change that by bringing back an updated version of the Civic Health Index as a guide for actions to improve communities. You can see from these statistics, most of which are dated from 2015 and 2013, but at that point, we were not at the right end of the spectrum on these various measurements in terms of volunteering and belonging to civic organizations, donating to charity, et cetera. We see this as a challenge, and we're also trying to kind of bring back the last Civic Health Index was undertaken in 2011 as statewide. And so we have been flying blind for 14 years. Just as a quick thing, get a lot more information on the Florida Civic Advance on the website, but I just wanted to kind of highlight our strategic framework for the next several years. We have values listed down the side and priorities across the way, as well as cross-cutting strategies. And so in particular, we're really being focused in this next several years on supporting civic health really through community measurements. So that brings us to this program today for TableTalk. I'm going to introduce Sandy Vidal presently, who is the Vice President of Community Strategies and Initiatives at the Central Florida Foundation. But before I get there and have Sandy introduce the presenters here, I want to just kind of suggest that the importance of how we prepare for these webinars. We really appreciate the items that are listed in terms of what you want to learn from today's webinar. And what you can see is, the who, the what, and the how on these statements. And what I would say at the outset is we're going to answer many of these questions about how this TableTalk function has started, created in 2019 at the Central Florida Foundation. But we're really going to focus on the kind of civic engagement side of this strategy, although a lot of the strategies are going to be oriented ultimately to community challenges and community problems. So just wanted to let you know that it's really helpful for the registrants to list these ideas about what they want to learn, and it helps us prepare for the webinar. So Sandy, I'm going to ask you to introduce the presenters that we have today with us, and we'll get underway.
Terrific. So thank you all for being here today and listening to us talk about TableTalk, which has been kind of a labor of love over the past 4 or 5 years. We're going into year 5, and so we're going to kind of recap what we've done along the way. TableTalk is not unique to Central Florida. What we call it is unique to Central Florida, but I'll give you a little bit of history as I go into my piece of the presentation, and then you'll meet Tiffany Jeffers, who was one of our super hosts, and then Zaynep Portway, who has been a host for several years and is one of our microgrant recipients. And then Dr. Bahia Maroon is going to share with you the outcomes of the survey that we did. And she's been our survey partner and is an amazing think tank and research partner in our community, and has done a lot of work in some of the more marginalized communities. She's actually got a briefing coming up in the city of the town of Eatonville coming up in the next couple of days. And so we're very pleased to be partnered with all of these wonderful ladies. And so I'll allow them to share a little bit about their stories as we get into it.
Okay. Sandy, I'm going to stop share and you can pick it up.
All right. So TableTalk is really a product of On the Table, which was started by the Chicago Trust many years ago. And the James L. Knight Foundation in Miami was actually the funder of that first group of what we call table talks, or talks around the table. The Knight Foundation loved this strategy so much that they picked up doing 30 other cities across the United States. Orlando was not one of those. We ended up doing this on our own without the overarching support of another foundation, but we were able to do it because all of the foundations that we talked to who had done it before were very willing to share with us their model, share with us their information that they had shared with their table hosts, and just all of the formula around doing a table talk. And so we were very, very privileged to be able to have that piece. So what is Table Talk? I'll kind of give you some background. What I'm going to do is kind of go through Table Talk and really what we did to create this group convening of tables across the community. And then I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues to talk about their experiences, talk about the data, and then I'll close out with some information about what we're doing that's going to be different in the future with this. So what Table Talk is, it's really a candid conversation that for us took place this last one on October 19th. And it was 2,000 people across the community having conversations about 5 distinct areas, or just the community in general. The way that the Central Florida Foundation works, we have a framework where we focus on 5 areas that kind of mirror the social determinants of health. We focus on economic stability, we focus on healthcare, education, community and social connection, which includes civic engagement, includes gender equality and racial inequity, and all of those components around belongingness and those types of things. And then livability, which is environment, public safety, and arts and culture. And so they chose which one of those areas they wanted to speak about, or community in general. And the idea was to get ideas flowing, just to start to have conversations, to think about how do we make our community a better place. It's about encouragement, it's about creating connections, it's about really building community together. And for us, it doesn't stop with Table Talk, but it's the beginning. And Table Talk creates kind of this ongoing environment of how we communicate with our fund holders, our nonprofits in the community, and other stakeholders. So in the beginning, there was a lot of questions as we were starting to get our steering committee together. And we had a steering committee that it consisted of some elected officials, some government employees, some nonprofit leaders from the community, some business leaders, but it was a rather large steering committee of different stakeholders. And they started to ask a lot of questions. And so we put the slide together. The first question is, what's in it for me? Why should I participate in this process? They also wanted to say things like, we need to make sure that we're creating safe spaces for people to talk, because people will not talk and will not be vulnerable unless they feel safe in those spaces and environments. And then really, what's the point? Why are we doing this? What happens next? And I'll talk about that a little bit later in the conversation. But the real gist of it is we wanted to hear from the community and understand what are the things that are going right in the community, where are the opportunities for us to improve, and what are they going to do, and what can we do to improve the community and things that are going on in the community. And so again, the point is meeting new people, having a chance to be part of a positive community experience, having your voice heard, being part of something bigger than yourself, trying new ideas. And we had a series of TableTalk grants, and Zainab will talk about hers. She was able to secure a TableTalk grant as part of this process. And then just, the world feels polarized. And so we really wanted to bring people together in a way that they could have conversations that wasn't contentious. We do put together a packet for facilitators, and we talk about conflict resolution. We talk about facilitation. We also had webinars to kind of go through, make sure that the people who are being really quiet have an opportunity to speak. Make sure that if conflict arises, that you're able to kind of dissipate that and bring it down to, a low roar rather than craziness. We didn't hear a lot of stories of people having conflict at the table. I think there are times where we don't necessarily agree on everything, but we can have civil conversations. And so this was a chance to really show that Central Florida is a functional community. We can get stuff done. We can work together really well. And let's take those ideas and put them into practice. So this was kind of the guide for the Table Talk hosts. We told them, have your conversation, come up with your solutions, take the survey. You'll see the results of that in a little bit. And then we sent a communal letter to city and county leaders. And we also sent it to our elected officials in the state House and state Senate. We sent it to our federal leaders as well, that you can see on our website. I have a link to a community landscape that we did towards the end of the presentation, but we did this letter to leaders that really said, here's what we heard, here's some action steps you can take, here's the survey that was taken, and here's a link to the landscape as well, and just highlighted a few things that came out of these conversations. And then the micro grant was another kind of carrot for the people who participated. And the grants were up to, I believe, $2,500, and they could apply for that. They did have to be associated with a nonprofit. We're not able to do grants to individuals, but we did have individuals that we partnered with nonprofits to get their ideas into play. So I'm going to turn it over to Tiffany Jeffers. Tiffany held her Table Talk as a superhost and had over 100 guests in attendance. And so she's going to share with you a little bit about her Table Talk experience, why she got involved, and just what the outcome, because she had a really big outcome of the experience was. And so I'm going to turn it over to Tiffany now.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share our story. We had the wonderful opportunity of hosting a table talk in Osceola County. We were very excited to have this opportunity for our community to be able to come together, to connect, and to share ideas on how we could improve our community. We kind of got started a little late, so we had heard about it late, but we were able to quickly gather our community leaders. The one thing I loved about doing the table talk was that the Central Florida Foundation really held our hand the entire way, whether it was collateral or advice, the Zoom meetings that they had with the leaders where they shared immense information made it such an incredibly easy process for us that we just were like, we can do this. We can really do an event. And we were very surprised. We were expecting maybe 25, 30 folks to come to the table. But we ended up having 100 or so people in the room who were sitting around tables and sharing their individual stories. We also began our table talk with a panel just to get people, kind of a baseline of where to start the conversation. They could ask questions, and some of the leaders included our local commissioners, local business leaders, and grassroots leaders in the community who were just excited to share their time for an opportunity like this. We were able to actually curate our event to what we thought would be interesting to our community, which was also great because you can really tailor the event to your audience. And what we did was we called ours the Lift Every Voice Courageous Conversations. And I mean, it just brought out everyone from the Kissimmee Police Department to United Way and local church officials. And it was just such a great time. We did not have any conversations where anyone was, maybe raucous or felt like they weren't heard, which was great. And from there, we were able to share ideas. And then, at the end, people were saying, well, what's next? What do we do from here? And what came out of it was um, the start of another meeting, smaller meeting of community leaders to say, well, what do we do? And from that came the Black Empowerment and Community Council. We have a representation of, I believe it's 17% of Black people in in Osceola County. And we wanted to use the data from our event to really steer this toward the Black and Brown community. And so our organization was installed at the end of Black History Month. And it was just a great celebration of where we're going and how we're going to continue to have these conversations and strategize ways to uplift and empower our community. So we're just pleased to be able to be a part. Sandy, you're on mute.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much, Tiffany. And if people have questions, you can put them in the chat. We also will have a Q&A towards the end. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Zainab, who runs Samaritan Resource Center, which is a homeless drop-in center in East Orlando, the only homeless drop-in center on that side of town, and really one of the few agencies on that side of town. And she took a very unique approach in including not only her staff and some volunteers, but also some of the constituents that they serve. And so I'll let Zainab tell you a little bit about her experience.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I had to switch to my phone because something bad happened to my laptop. I don't know what yet. I'm panicking here. So we've participated in Table Talk since 2020 or 2021, I believe, for 3 years in a row. Our organization participated. We don't have a large group. We typically get 12 to 15 folks at the table, and we make sure we invite not only our staff, but also our volunteers, who are a big part of our organization. and our clients that we serve, who are typically your chronically homeless, just sleeping outside, and typically they don't get heard by anyone. For the most part, they're surprised because nobody really asks their opinion ever. They're just told what to do and how to do it. So it adds a really great dimension to our table talk. So as we go through the questions that we get from the foundation to get prepared for it, there are different, every year it's been a different topic, it's been a different approach. And this year our clients, especially our clients, wanted to advocate for themselves. They wanted people to know and find out about what it is being homeless, not just what it's like as the experience, but they wanted people to know them, to get to know who they are, and that they're people just like everybody else, that they have the same experiences, they feel the same things, they go through the same things that the rest of us do. They're just doing it in a different environment. So that's what we applied for, to get some marketing dollars to see if we could start a marketing campaign. That was our approach to it this year. So that's what we've done.
Thank you, Zainab. And the TableTalk grant that they did will allow them to add some marketing components and be able to really tell the stories of the people that they're serving. And you can see in this picture, you can see some of the supplies that they were provided with, notes and different topic areas. And then you can see the suggested TableTalk questions as kind of the guide. There's also an online guidebook that tells about facilitating and those types of things. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Bahia Maroon, who again is, really a think tank partner in our community. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and she'll share hers with the survey results that we put together, or she put together, and her team, after the Table Talk happened. So I will turn it over to Bahia.
Great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much for having Polis Institute today. This is a terrific group, and we're delighted to be able to present to all of you. And Polis Institute is an action research institute. We're located here in Central Florida, and we're really honored to be able to provide change makers with the data insights and the actionable tools that they need in order to do their work. And so we have been delighted to be able to partner with the Central Florida Foundation for the past several years on their Table Talk work. And what we do at Polis Institute is we provide the back of house support to bringing together all the insights about the surveys that Table Talk attendees fill out. And that's what I'm going to share with all of you this morning. And so for this year's Table Talk, there were about 322 survey respondents coming in from, I believe, a little over 200 tables. And what we have provided to the Central Florida Foundation, and what the Central Florida Foundation provides to all of you, absolutely free and accessible to everyone, is this Table Talk dashboard. When I finish speaking, I'll drop the link into the chat so everyone has it. But this Table Talk dashboard allows you to discover ideas, discover answers, and uncover ideas. And as you can see here, there are a couple of different tabs that you can look into. And so this morning, I'm just going to share with you a little bit about what we've found, and also hopefully inspire all of you to come and look at this data and learn about what your peers and fellows across Central Florida communities are talking about. So here you can see that the age distribution for Table Talk participants is fairly well reflective of what we see in community in general. At the beginning and the tail end of the age distribution, we'd obviously want to see more representation there, but this is a fairly good outcome. We also note that while the representation of Latino and Hispanic community members is fairly low in this year's Table Talk, that's something to be inspired about for all of you who are going to organize Table Talks next year. And then for racial representation, it's actually very much on par for Orange County. And then some of the numbers are a little bit different when we get out into the other 6 counties of Central Florida. But again, a pretty good representation. We do see here a reflection of the growing role of women's voices in civic engagement. And so while this gender representation slide is certainly not reflective of the population as a whole, it is reflective of how seriously all of us who do social good work must take the voice and the role of women in being activists and organizers in our communities. So here you can get a sense of the topics discussed. And you can see that many of the tables focused on economic stability. And then the second most salient topic was community and social connections. And so again, this is really both a reflection of the topics that were discussed at tables last year and an invitation for all of those topics that can be discussed next year. So if you're an environmental activist, for example, and you're looking here and you're saying, well, livability and environmental topics isn't really reflected here, it's a wonderful call to action for organizing your tables next year. The majority of people felt very hopeful, which is an important change from what we saw in the 2021 Table Talk data. And so this is just a reminder that despite all of those news headlines, when we're wanting to connect with people in community, connecting from a framework of optimism is important. Those respondents who were most worried are respondents in the older age groups. And again, it's a call to action. It's recognizing that messaging around optimism is going to be really important when you're looking at 59 and below. Being able to genuinely address the fears and concerns of the senior constituents is a meaningful way to address messaging. So this slide with all these numbers that you absolutely do not have to absorb right now in this moment, this slide is really telling you that when you get into the dashboard, you can ask for information from 2023, and you can ask to compare that information to what we saw in 2021. And again, it's allowing all of you who are policy-minded, who are message-minded, marketing-minded, community engagement-minded, you can see the trends that are happening in community across time. And so what we see here, for example, is that there's a wonderful increase in the number of people who attended community meetings, whereas the percentage of folks who voted in an election kind of held about steady. So again, being able to have that comparative view between 21 and 23. You can also use a filter in the dashboard that says age, and that allows you to see the differences of opinion across age groups. And so you can see here on this slide that generationally, there are some real distinctions. For example, in the percentages of people who belong to a community group, Gen Z, Gen Y, and Gen X have differences in the degree to which they do or don't volunteer, they do or don't contact public officials. And it's really striking, just to take one instance, 43% of Gen X respondents contacted public officials, but 50% of Gen Z contacts public officials. And then we can look at our boomer generation and our silent generation. And again, we see some very, very distinct differences where 73% of boomers will contact public officials. I should say baby boomers will contact public officials, contrast to 57% of the silent generation. Again, these slides with all of their numbers are really intended to remind each of us that when we're looking at different racial and ethnic groups, when we're looking at distinctions between generation, the general overall average of any finding is actually going to change, and it's going to be really distinct. And so you can see here that, well, 85% of Hispanic and Latino respondents feel that economic stability should be addressed by Central Florida stakeholders. Only 65% of white and Black or African American respondents feel that way. Again, you can see some real differences in housing responses, really important differences on how people view social justice issues. And this last piece of information reminds us all that different constituencies see their link to change differently. And so some constituencies very much feel that nonprofit organizations are overwhelmingly the key to change. Other constituencies see a really important feature in residents within their own community. Some constituencies feel that local government is an important piece of the pie, while other constituencies really don't see local government as key to change. And again, this doesn't mean this is the way it should be or it will always be. It means that it's an important data point for all of us to consider as we're planning, as we're strategizing, and as we are communicating. So again, I will drop the link to that dashboard in the chat, and I'm delighted to be able to share these insights with all of you.
Thank you, Dr. Maroon. Appreciate that oversight, not oversight, that overview of the TableTalk survey. And that is something that we have done from the beginning, where we really want to know, what are people thinking? What are they reacting to? And not only do we take in the quantitative data and ask for those questions, but we also collect in the TableTalk notes that will help us to be able to understand what people are thinking. So, organizations like Tiffany's will give us the notes of what did people say? What were the things that were resounding? We did some word clouds and some other things as an after effect of looking at all of those different things. And we put those into that letter to leaders, which you can find in our website. So just a little bit more about where we've been and where we're going. So where we've been over the last 4 years, since 2019, 5 years, we've only done 4 table talks in the 5 years. We took a year off as a pause, so that's why I say 4 years, is we've had our table talk conversations. We've had the micro grants. We've really looked at cross-sector engagement and collaboration. I think a couple people had asked questions about, how do we involve people whose voices are not normally at the table? And part of that is by working with our nonprofit partners and asking them to really think about not just bringing their donors to the table, but bringing the voices of the people that they serve, the people they're in community with. And we have a lot of grassroots organizations that we work with because we do a series of grassroots grants for organizations that are under $250,000 in revenue. And we try to make sure that in that there's a distribution of minority-run nonprofits so that we're really getting a taste of what's going on across our community and having those connections and having that feedback loop, which is really important to us. So we want to make sure that we're elevating those voices, and that's through that nonprofit and general public participation. And then what's come out of that is some data collection, and I'll share a link as well. And there's going to be a QR code that you can look at the Central Florida community landscape that we've put together. But also looking, as I mentioned, not just at the quantitative data and what are people saying, but really the qualitative overall, what are people feeling in these conversations. And then some of the Table Talk conversations have continued on into post-Table Talk conversations and continue to go on. So we're going to be changing things up when it comes to the next Table Talk. And what we're going to be doing is continuing to do Table Talk, but we're giving it to the community. And what we're doing in that is we're going to be working with different partners across the community for them to hold their own Table Talks in a superhost capacity. We'll still be doing a survey component and working with them on their survey, but rather than giving micro grants on the back end, we'll be giving them a grant to participate on the front end. So they can provide food, they can get a location if they need to, some of the things that come up in questions all the time. And we'll be doing at least 10 of those and asking people to bring 5 tables of 8 people into the conversation. Others can participate, but this will be a concentrated group. And we'll continue all of the other activities that we've been doing, and we'll be asking for data from those grantees in particular, and then also continuing to have post-Table Talk conversations with the leaders that have participated in this process. And then some of the things that are ongoing and outcrops of Table Talk is we have a podcast that we started, and we actually just launched podcast number 4 yesterday. And so that is called First You Talk, and you can access that as well on our website, which is a wealth of information. But it really continues that conversation that we've started, and we dig into some of the deep issues in our communities. This last one's on innovation, but we've tackled homelessness. Our marketing director, Lori, actually went over to the Samaritan Resource Center and talked to some of the individuals who go to the Samaritan Resource Center for help. We also tackled housing, which was another tough subject, and talked to some of the people that have gotten housing through Habitat for Humanity. And we've also tackled the very complex problem of mental illness, mental health. So, and also talking to people who've had experience with mental health issues. And so this digs in a little bit deeper, and we try to include the independent sector. Mayor Buddy Dyer's been on our podcast, local government leaders, and also entrepreneurs, business owners, nonprofits, so that we're keeping the conversations real. We also like to have those lesser known voices, as I mentioned, people experiencing the issues that we're trying to support through our grants and through the operations of the Central Florida Foundation. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to continue our Table Talk series, and that will go on starting next year. Actually, this year we'll start in the summer to recruit those table hosts and work with them on creating their own Table Talk experiences, and then coming together with us to report back on what they've experienced in the Table Talk. So I will now turn it over to this QR code. You may or may not be able to capture the landscape off of there, but I will put the code into the chat as well in just a moment. So I'll give you just a second or two to break out your phones and scan that QR code, and then I will turn it back over to Bob.
Hey, Sandy, thank you so much. This was a really compelling presentation. Sandy, one thing that you didn't mention, but I think you spoke to me in the past about this, is that this is very labor intensive for a community foundation to do. And hopefully the rewards in terms of influencing your investment strategies as well as engaging with your community can be a payoff for that investment. But it is a significant investment. And in terms of what would you say to, say, other community foundations around the state who are thinking that maybe this is something that we should do to better connect with our citizens and residents?
Yeah, I think you have to decide what the scope of it is. The first year we were like, we want 5,000 people. And, we, I think, got 3,000 out of that 5,000. But it does take a lot of time in marketing and getting the word out. You are trying to approach people through social media. We had to get sponsors because we did not have a grant to do this. So our goal, I think, in budget was around $85,000, and that didn't include staff time. That was just some of the micro grant dollars. That was marketing dollars for the most part, and really getting that communication out. Also doing the steering committee, especially when you have a lot of different voices at the table. There's a lot of different opinions, and so if you're not a really good facilitator, it can get a little bit messy. And so we really spent a lot of time both with the steering committee as a whole and then with individuals within the steering committee to say, here's what we're trying to accomplish, and having them participate. We've been fortunate since the beginning to have some of the same sponsors. Florida Blue has been a partner since the beginning, and also to have many of the same steering committee members come back. And a lot of them are just really representative of all different communities. Our LGBTQ plus center was a super host and have been in the past. We had Natalie Jones, who I had hoped would be able to be part of this group today, but she had an emergency that had happened last week, and so we kind of went a little bit of a different direction. She runs a nonprofit called The Click, and she held the super host in her location. But again, it's educating people about it. And so I think we have embraced it, but at the same time, I think we all know within our staff that this is extremely time consuming, and you have other things that are going on that you have to do. And so part of, I think, our strategy within the foundation is really to integrate this into the rest of the work we're doing. We let the conversations help to inform our overall community investment strategies. We've weaved in some of our grassroots grantees into this conversation. And so, it's really looking at how do we bring everybody together around the table to have these conversations and kind of show what direction we should go as far as our grants.
Great. Oh, and I had a follow-up question. You answered it. The connection with your investment strategy and how that has evolved. And I think your phase two is reflective of your really thoughtful organization trying to kind of figure out what's next in the situation. So I want to open it up to anyone who would like to pose a question, make a comment about the things that you've heard on this webinar.
Don't be afraid, we don't bite. I will share, I was on a webinar. We do a Ask Us Everything quarterly where my team gets online and just opens the door to nonprofits to ask us whatever they want to ask us. And I tell them if nobody talks, I'll fill space. But one of the things, I put the link in for the community landscape. I've been doing that on a biannual basis. And this one, we have a fantastic marketing director who made it really pretty. The previous one doesn't look quite as nice, but as we're looking at what are the challenges and opportunities within our community, this does help speak to those things. It helps us to really be able to hear voices within our community. The Orange County government has been part of this for several years now and has incorporated all of the neighborhood centers into the conversation. One of the things that we see, when you look at the percentage of people who actually complete surveys, I know with mine, we did it with our book club, my book club, and we were all just so busy talking and chatting and getting into the conversation that I put on TableTalk and I forgot to give everybody the survey. So I had to send it out later, and so you get into these conversations and you forget about it, and that's not good. We also know that white people, white women love to do surveys. Everybody else doesn't. And so it's a struggle sometimes to get those surveys. But we actually went back to paper surveys this year because we wanted to make sure that people's voices were captured. And Gina had asked a question about targeting
Yes.
invites for communities we feel are underrepresented. Yes. And that's why we involved like the neighborhood centers and the Click and organizations like Zainab that are representing the homeless. The LGBTQ plus center is helping to reach out into the LGBTQ plus community. We have a representative who is from the Asian community who's like, we need to make sure that our voices are heard as well. So we try really hard to reach out as far as we can. I think Faith has a question.
Yeah.
Hi, thanks Bob for opening this space for questions. I'm Faith Grant. I'm with the Miami Foundation, and Sandy, thank you for this presentation. I have a few questions, but you've been answering them along the way. One I do have though is, and forgive me if you mentioned this, is from after you survey the participants and then you draft recommendations for the elected officials, did you mention if there were like outcomes? So based on those recommendations, like what were the next steps with the elected officials? Were there any, just next steps or outcomes that you can share from those recommendations?
We just sent it out last week. And so I'm just starting to get some answers and some feedback back, like, oh, I read it, or, oh, I saw this, but I'm not sure what to do with it. We do have 3 particular asks of the elected officials. And so those are in the letter to leaders, which you can read. It's online on our TableTalk website. And so we're really asking them to engage or re-engage with the community. We're asking them to look at the community landscape and look at those things that are opportunity areas that could potentially be invested in. And the other thing is, just I think communicating with them at large. We have a very good relationship with most of our elected officials within the Tri-County area, at least. We cover 7 counties, but we have sister foundations in some of the other counties. And so we kind of delegate off to them what's in their backyard. But we're really asking them to look at what we heard and respond to it. And so I'm in conversations with Scott Maxwell, who's one of our local columnists for the Orlando Sentinel, and we're talking about what does the next step look like through the Sentinel and holding people accountable. But it's not really a gotcha process. It's really more of a let's understand what is going on in our community and what we can do. And it's not just about the elected officials, but it's really about the community getting engaged in their own solutions. I can tell you, Bahia, Dr. Maroon has done a lot of research in our community, and we've just recently started taking over the grant making for the city of Winter Garden. And when I read a lot of the data and looked at a lot of the data, you would think that in 2 census blocks that are very underrepresented and undereducated, low median income, that they would want all of these economic opportunities and work, and they do, but the thing that they really wanted was places to gather and being heard and green spaces. And so what we think is what people need is not always what they need. And so listening to what it is they want and need is really important. And so that's what we've gotten out of that experience is, you know, really sharing with our elected officials, you got to listen. And that's why the name of our podcast is First You Talk, because, you know, we want them to talk, us to listen, and then we respond.
Awesome. Thanks, Sandy.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other questions, comments on what you've heard today? So congratulations for this initiative and for your sticking with it 5 years and you're continuing to invest in this civic engagement effort going forward in phase 2. And so I want to kind of let Tiffany and Zainab and Dr. Maroon have any kind of last words in terms of this, and then Sandy, you can give us the adjourn notice. So, Tiffany?
Yes, so we're just excited for all of the data that has come out from the Polis Institute, and it's really going to shape the way that we connect and grow deeper in our community. And if you're thinking about hosting a table talk, please do so. If you're thinking about even just getting involved in your community in a deeper way, using that data is a great way to do that, and we're excited to do so.
Zainab.
Hi, yeah, I would say definitely if you're considering doing this in your community, definitely go for it because it grows and it changes through the years, and it's been very cool to hear from people that you wouldn't normally hear from, and to get their insight into what our community needs and not just what we as nonprofit staff and foundations think we need. So it's definitely been an enlightening experience.
Great. Dr. Maroon. I actually have a question, Dr. Maroon. The list of that you were surveying on was essentially drawn from the census community survey list of things like meeting with a public official or volunteering, et cetera. And this is also related to the Civic Health Index, which it tries to capture through demographic information, census information, the profile of the civic health of a community. But so I wanted to acknowledge that I thought that was a really interesting way to survey the participants in Table Talk, and also can connect as well to broader census data to deepen the both the analysis and the outcomes.
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Yeah. First, I have to say credit for the survey questions goes to the Central Florida Foundation. They do just an excellent job on due diligence with an advisory committee that helps to shape those questions. And I, offer the model that they use of having questions by committee, which is not an easy process, but that's a wonderful model for everyone to use. And, I just want to really highlight and uplift the way that this Table Talk process and all of the different components so deeply serve Central Florida, and also stand as a model for other GOs for how they may want to utilize the Table Talk model or another community engagement model. But the reason that this is such a valuable process is because every single point in the process, everyone's standing up and doing the work, from an advisory committee shaping survey questions to the incredible table captains, the super hosts who make sure that community are engaged and showing up and able to participate on topics they care about. And I just really want to flag that critical distinction. We very often invite people to tables to talk about topics we care about based on our strategic plans and our mission and vision and so forth. And Table Talk flips that idea and says, what do your constituents care about the most? Invite them to have a conversation about that. And all of that incredible work makes it possible for our team at Polis Institute to have this rich trove of data. And we take the responsibility for presenting that data in a publicly accessible, thoughtful way very seriously. And so again, we really hope to see many people engaging with the Table Talk dashboard so that you're both inspired and informed for your table talks next year.
Thank you, Doctor. Sandy, any last words on this?
Yeah, I'd just say, echo what they've said. If you're interested in doing it, go for it. We're available if you want to talk about, how we did, what we did. Dr. Maroon is probably a great person to hire for your survey work. I don't know your scope in geography, but they are an absolute pleasure to work with. But I would say if you can't do it large, go small. We have within our community and social connection, 2 of our team members here have brought together groups from different demographics to talk about what's important to them, listening to our nonprofits from different communities talk about the unique challenges that their community has is really important to us as well. And so we take the Table Talk model and kind of use it in other settings as well. And I think you can do that and still get significant information that you can use in the work that you do within your communities. And so, thank you for this platform to have a conversation about it. And we, certainly appreciate the opportunity to talk and to share our experience.
Great. Well, I really appreciate it. I want to thank all of the presenters. Really fantastic stories. Your work is inspiring. And I think this model for civic engagement is a really hands-on model for helping to steer investment in the things that matter to communities. And again, thank you, all of you, Dr. Maroon, for your data analysis, really compelling presentation, really interesting way in which you went about it, and the whole team effort to bring this forward and about. So again, thank you, Sandy, in particular for inviting the presenters to the table. And I'm going to suggest that we adjourn this webinar, and we'll see you later in the spring with another webinar. You'll be getting information on that soon. So thank you very much, everyone, participating.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.